From Capital, Volume 1, Chapter 19. But what is the value of a commodity? The objective form of the social labor expended in its production. And how do we measure the quantity of this value? By the quantity of the labor contained in it. How then is the value example given of a 12-hour working day to be determined? By the 12 working hours contained in a working day of 12 hours, which is an absurd tautology. In order to be sold as a commodity in the market, labor must at all events exist before it is sold. But could the laborer give it an independent objective existence, he would sell a commodity and not labor. Apart from these contradictions, a direct exchange of money, i.e. of realized labor with living labor, would either do away with the law of value, which only begins to develop itself freely on the basis of capitalist production, or do away with capitalist production itself, which rests directly on wage labor. The working day of 12 hours embodies itself, example given, in a money value of 6 shillings. Either equivalence or exchange, and then the laborer receives 6 shillings for 12 hours labor, the price of his labor would be equal to the price of his product. But in this case, he produces no surplus value for the buyer of his labor. The 6 shillings are not transformed into capital. The basis of capitalist production vanishes. But it is on this very basis that he sells his labor, and that his labor is wage labor. Or else he receives for 12 hours labor less than 6 shillings, i.e. less than 12 hours labor. 12 hours labor are exchanged against 10, 6, and etc. hours labor. This equalization of unequal quantities does not merely does away with the determination of value. Such a self-destructive contradiction cannot be in any way even enunciated or formulated as a law. I want to reiterate here. Apart from these contradictions, a direct exchange of money, i.e. of realized labor with living labor, would either do away with the law of value, which only begins to develop itself freely on the basis of capitalist production. Let us now go to Joseph Stalin from 1951, Economic Problems of the USSR. It is sometimes asked whether the law of value exists and operates in our country under the socialist system. Yes, it does exist and does operate. Wherever commodities and commodity production exist, there the law of value must also exist. In our sphere, the sphere of operation of the law of value extends first of all to commodity circulation, to the exchange of commodities through purchase and sale, the exchange chiefly of articles of personal consumption. Here in this sphere, the law of value preserves within certain limits, of course, the function of a regulator. But the operation of the law of value is not confined to the sphere of commodity circulation. It also extends to production. True, the law of value has no regulating function in our socialist production. I think that this is questionable. But it nevertheless influences production, and this fact cannot be ignored when directing production. As a matter of fact, consumer goods, which are needed to compensate the labor power expended in the process of production, are produced and realized in our country as commodities coming under the operation of the law of value. It is precisely here that the law of value exercises its influence on production. In this connection, such things as cost accounting and profitableness, production costs, prices, etc., are of actual importance in our enterprises. Consequently, our enterprises cannot and must not function without taking the law of value into account. Is this a good thing? It is not a bad thing. Under present conditions, it really is not a bad thing, since it trains our business executives to conduct production on rational lines and disciplines them. It is not a bad thing because it teaches our executives to count production magnitudes, to count them accurately, and also to calculate the real things in production precisely, and not to talk about nonsense about approximate figures spun out of air. It is not a bad thing because it teaches our executives to look for, find, and utilize hidden reserves latent in production. To my mind, that reads like an accurate description of surplus value. To lower production costs, to practice cost accounting, and to make their enterprises pay. It is a good practical school which accelerates the development of our executive personnel and their growth into genuine leaders of socialist production at the present stage. Now, it could be argued that the law of value existed under pre-capitalist formations like feudalism and therefore will exist under post-capitalist formations like socialism. I really don't think this to be the case, and I don't think it's supported, simply because, well, if you abolish wage labor, you have abolished the whole basis for the law of value entirely. You're abolishing wage labor, you're abolishing exchange value, and implementing direct use value productions. So where is the value that gets transformed into exchange value for the realization of surplus value to be derived? It's simply impossible. There's no way. This is basically a tacit admission that the Soviet Union was state capitalist. But this analysis doesn't go far enough, and I think it can be taken further within the domain of Marxian analysis. And I can directly reference, and I'll directly reference this again, Marx's letter to Engles in 1868. Then it thus turns out that, assuming the rate of surplus value, i.e. the exploitation of labor, as equal, the production of value and therefore the production of surplus value and therefore the rate of profit are different in different branches of production. But from these varying rates of profit, a mean or general rate of profit is formed by competition. This rate of profit, expressed absolutely, can be nothing but the surplus value produced annually by the capitalist class in relation to the total value of social capital advanced. Example given: the social capital equals 400C plus 100V, and the surplus value annually produced by it equals 100M. The composition of the social capital equals 80C plus 20V, and that of the product in percentages equals 80C plus 20V divided by plus 20M equals 20% the rate of profit. This is the general rate of profit. What the competition among the various masses of capital invested in different spheres of production and differently employed is striving for is capitalist communism, namely that the mass of capital employed in each sphere of production should get a fractional part of the total surplus value proportionate to the part of the total social capital that it forms. In other words, it is my view that all of these attempts to build pseudo-communistic structures throughout history while retaining the law of value is basically an attempt to realize capitalist communism. And I include the Soviet Union in this. I include the upcoming Great Reset, the New Deal. I regard all of these things as manifestations of an attempt to realize Marx's capitalist communism. I think that this, or Engles' state capitalism from anti-Düring, is the final boss of capitalism, say. And I think that there's a push undergirding the whole method of social production, a push in this direction.